Good morning, campers.
And welcome to Radio Camp
Percy Jackson
Podcast.
I'm your host, Zach. And guys, well, this is awkward. This is just a cluster luck waiting to happen. And guys, it's our 100th episode. Woo!
Yeah, it's our 100th episode, which we only realized like moments before recording today. But that makes it more exciting and immediate, I guess.
Yeah, it's very sporadic, just like me. I'm just like, let's wake up today. Maybe I'll go skydiving. Okay.
Yeah, so in honor of our 100th episode, which I can't even believe. I mean, in some ways it feels like we've done more than 100 episodes. And in some ways I'm surprised.
About 100.
I know that it's about, I mean, we actually have done more because we have some bonus episodes, but I don't know. It's weird. In some ways I was like, oh, did we already reach 100 episodes? Or like, are we very far away? Either way, I'm surprised we're here. So here we are. It's happening.
I'm shocked that we even got to 100 episodes. Usually most of my guests and co-hosts peter out by 10.
By 10 is your... Well, how many... You've had... What? How many guests did you have? 50 was on Nightmare on Fear Street. I mean, that's pretty good. A lot of people don't make it that far.
No, a lot of people don't make it that far. What was it for Unfortunate Associates? Because I think you guys got like 2 more left, right?
Yeah, as far as I can tell, we're done. Probably just 1 more left, but we're maybe going to do another bonus thing. But I don't remember how much we actually recorded for that. I feel like it's close to like 70 or 80 or something like that.
Jeez. Wow, that's a lot.
I don't know if that's true. Maybe I'm overestimating based on Radio Camp Half-Blood. I'm really kind of proud that we got this far with this show. I mean, we have like a lot of interesting content, and I kind of like the approach we took with the chapter by chapter thing. In some ways it really lets me do what I think I'm good at when it comes to literature analysis, which is like the close reading aspect. And sometimes, if we do 1 book per episode, like what we did with the Demigod Files, it was a little bit harder for me to like zero in on specific passages. So I really like this.
And for me, I think it's a much better blend for both of us because we'd have to sit there, read an entire book within a week. And with our schedules, sometimes it might happen, sometimes it's not. But it kind of, you lose the important details, especially with Rick Riordan puts into play. I think going chapter by chapter is so much better. Originally, we were supposed to be doing a book per week, but we thought, well, we'd only have like 20-something episodes, and then it would be done. And like, what do we do?
And I think it wouldn't do it justice in some ways. At first when we started the show, I think I didn't realize how much you can get out of each of these chapters, because it is like, I think the stereotype about YA or like kids books is that there isn't much to it and it's very simplistic. But even Rick Riordan, who kind of writes in a more like approachable way than like someone like Daniel Handler, I still think that there's a lot to unpack. I mean, I hope there is, because that's how our show functions. So
even with Sears Unfortunate Events, if you look at chapter by chapter, they all follow a very simple formula. You either have a word gets defined,
yeah,
Violet does something smart, basically Sunny says something, and then there's the weird thing like, this is what she really means. And then Klaus talks about books, and that's pretty much a chapter. When it comes to like Rick Riordan and his approach to chapters, each one kind of follows a kind of a formula where you kind of learn something about mythology, may it be from a character, a god, a monster, but always you're going to learn something with each chapter. That's why I like about Rick Riordan is he has like this great sense of infotainment where he can drop that information that isn't like hits you over the head like bonk, but it actually makes it a lot of fun. Like there's some great chapters in all of Percy Jackson, like the Medusa chapters, a very good example of infotainment and how it can work and kind of to apply action.
Oh yeah, that's a very obvious. Well, I feel like as the books have gone on, they've gotten a little bit more subtle with the infotainment stuff, especially because what they teach you seems to be more of a deep cut. Like the different mythological beings that we learn about are inherently more forgotten about because that's sort of the plot of the book, right? These are like forgotten gods that haven't been mentioned as much. Well, like in the earlier books, we talk about characters like Medusa and Circe, you know what I mean? So I think the Minotaur, exactly, more like recognizable beings.
That makes sense because how Rick Riordan probably outlined this book was you want to start out with your heavy hitters, your main lineup. I don't know why I'm using baseball, but you start with your main lineup, and then eventually you start to go into the people on the bench, and you go to like more obscure things because mythology is so big and vast. Like we're only scratching the surface because when you get to it, there's the Titans, and then there's people that came before the Titans, and man, it makes my head hurt sometimes when you really think about mythology, because there's actually an interesting creation myth when it comes to Greek mythology, and I like that the blending of how like Rick Riordan does all of these things, especially from a kid's perspective, because this could easily be an adult-oriented book where you talk about the more effed up things about mythology, but he kind of like, what's the best way to put this? He like tiptoes through that very cleverly in a way that actually does work.
Yeah, I think so too. I think before we get too deep into like sort of general conversation, we should sort of tell people about the structure of this episode, because we'll probably get into a lot of this stuff with the Q&A that we planned.
Yes. Why don't you take it away, B? Don't you got your little piano?
Yeah. Dun, 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 dun. So yeah, we each have like 10 questions, one, for each of the other co-hosts, and we're going to kind of ask about Rick Riordan's books and other things. I think your questions are a little bit more general than mine. I just really went for the specific book questions, but regardless, we're just going to kind of, reflect on what we've learned so far, how things have changed, this crazy journey that we've gone on together.
Yes, it's going to be a very mytho-magic experience. I don't know why I'm...
A mytho-magic experience. That should be our tagline, actually, instead of Percy Jackson Read Along Podcast. It'll ruin our SEO, but regardless.
Oh yeah, our SEO is going to be destroyed, but the mytho-magic and the mythical puns that we make, it's the journey along the way. And what I really do enjoy about this is that we're going to learn a bit about each other. I think this is where we have like our buddy. This is the origin story of Zach and B, I guess.
It all started when we were at the opera with my parents. Anyway,
and there were some poison darts.
Oh wait, no, I was actually talking about Batman, but yeah, that one too. Don't go to the opera, you guys.
Wait, you have the same parents too? Wait, yours was watching Zorro? Mine were too.
Yeah, if you don't want your parents to die, don't go to the opera. I guess it's just dangerous to do that.
Or just don't be named Martha or Thomas Wayne. Simple as that. If you know that your parents' name are Martha and Thomas, stay away from theaters. It's okay.
Okay, I'm just going to start with my first question. What was one thing that surprised you while rereading the series?
Oh, for me... I guess this full disclosure, I actually haven't read any of the questions B's proposed, so if it's kind of like a weird stutter.
Message them and then you're like, I don't see anything.
No. So that question was what I was most surprised about was how fast everything goes in this series. I'm so used to reading fantasy books that are 1,000 pages, so like the plot doesn't really pick up until maybe page 800. And the crazy thing about Percy Jackson is that it flows so well. I think the characters are a lot of fun, but I was kind of, it could be like a real page turner in the way of, I can see now as an adult why I love these books more as a kid, because it has both the, it's funny, it has a lot of great action to it, but also I think it has a lot of heart that people kind of take advantage of, is that Percy Jackson is a story kind of in the vein of Harry Potter, where you have like this abused kid who kind of like rises up against his own environment and gets a family. And it's weird because the way you read these books, you always think of it as just the silly like adventure story. But then when you like really deep dive into it and like break down certain things, it kind of makes the story a lot bigger than it actually feels. And that's the great thing. And it feels like an actual myth that's being told, because even in myths you can have like that weird grandness to it, and you can also have these family problems. Like if you look at the story of Hercules, it's about a guy that kills his parents and his family and everyone in his whole tribe, and he's trying to look for redemption.
You've been surprised by how much they can convey in so few pages, basically. Like
kinda, yeah,
I could kind of see that, because there is a weird amount of plot actually, in like chapters that really aren't usually that long. So I think especially doing it chapter by chapter, it kind of highlights how much they can fit into a chapter sometimes. Yeah,
and also the way we're reading these books now is we're reading it chapter by chapter, so we're looking at it slower than the average person would read it.
For sure.
And it really shows the talent of Rick Riordan in that way of giving so much information in a single chapter rather than having information given to you within multiple chapters. I think that is an important thing that Rick Riordan does really, really well. And that's where you can probably guess that he's an outliner than he is like a free writer.
Yeah, we've definitely talked about that. It really comes through when you're like picking apart each chapter and trying to figure out how everything was plotted. And it just feels very intentional, usually, the way that things are structured.
So, B, are you ready for your question?
Yeah, I'm ready for my question.
Who is your favorite character?
Yeah. Oh man. I've been asked this question so many times, and every time I'm like, I don't know, because I like a lot of the characters, and then in some ways a lot of the characters that I love frustrate me to a certain extent. Let me think. Honestly, as of late, I think Rachel's my favorite character. I think she's really interesting as like a mortal who's like somehow involved in this world of demigods, and in a way, she really acts as like a analog for the reader, because you're not a demigod, obviously, reading these books. So it sort of feels like we immerse ourselves into this world and try to understand what's happening with Percy and his friends. And that's kind of what Rachel is doing. And I mean, especially in this book, it's really kind of rounded her out as like a real character. So I'm just going to say that, even though I like a lot of the other characters. But
It does say a lot about these books. It would be more surprising if Percy Jackson was immortal and everyone else around him was demigods. I think it could have changed the entire structure of the story.
oh, that would be totally different. Yeah.
Yeah, that he's not a hero, but yet he ends up being a hero, even though he doesn't have powers. Like, you could do it either way at this point.
Oh, yeah. I could totally see that. I think there's a very specific way in which this book series is about Percy coming to terms with the fact that he has all this power. Well, I think the reason Rachel's story is so interesting is because she has some powers in a way. She's sort of like a special mortal, right? She has
can
these
see through the
abilities
mist.
that-
She has these weird
yeah,
dreams.
she can see through the mist. Exactly. She's not quite a normal mortal, but I think like a perspective, like a book from her perspective would be really interesting, because she has a really kind of fascinating backstory and family life and personality. Like I really was surprised at how fleshed out she became as a character, because before she just seemed so like cartoonishly ridiculous, like this girl who just shows up,
At the Hoover Dam.
at the Hoover Dam, and you're like, who is this girl? And it seems intentional that you see her full name, and then she comes back and she actually ends up being pretty important and interesting in the plot.
Yeah, so there's like two ways of doing that, and also there's that weird fine balance. You either get a really interesting story, or you get the other perspective, like what is it that Stephanie Meyer did with Twilight, where we have Edward's perspective.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's so terrible. I don't know why I read it. I think because I read it with my sister.
I didn't know that Twilight was about vampires for the longest time. And then I like saw the book all the way, like all the time in like the hallway at school, and was like, what is this book about? And then when the movies finally came out and I realized it was about vampires, I was like, wait a second, this whole time this has been a book about vampires? Everyone was acting like this was amazing, and it's just about vampires? That sounds so ridiculous and boring. Like, I was so surprised.
That reminds me of like the Hunger Games. The first time I heard about it, my sister had read it and I had the book in the car, and I kept looking at the cover of it. And you know what I thought the book was about just by the cover and the title?
Yeah, no, exactly. It's like a picture of an apple. I had no idea what it was about. I was like, I don't know what this is.
I thought it was about a hunger strike, like a bunch of kids starving themselves to death.
Oh, the Hunger Games. Oh, no, right. I was thinking of Twilight. But yeah, Hunger. Well, it kind of sounds like it could be a hunger strike, I guess. That's sort of like the Chocolate War. That also sounds like it could be a hunger strike. Was not about that. I hated that book.
Or
also.
I Am Cheese, or I Am the Cheese.
I don't know that one.
That one's horribly depressing. It's about a kid that rides his bike and he goes to a mystical place where I don't want to spoil the book, but it's horribly depressing. B, what is your next question?
My next question is, how has your opinion of certain characters changed since you were a kid?
Oh, this one's easy. I'm actually shocked about Annabeth.
You're more annoyed by Annabeth? Is that it?
Not that I'm more annoyed by her, but I think as a kid, you look at her as like more of like a really big. It's kind of weird. It's like the Violet Baudelaire effect, where at one point she was older than you, but now I'm older than her.
Oh, yeah, totally. I totally know what you're saying, actually, because it's sort of like when people talk about, what is the movie I'm thinking of? The Little Mermaid, how like when she's like, I'm a grown adult or whatever, and she's only like 16
yeah.
or something, and they're like, no, you're a teenager. And that's kind of the way I feel when I watch something like, or Halloween Town, where she's like, I'm 13 now, I should do things on my own. And when you're watching that as like an 8-year-old, you're like, wow, yeah, she's so grown up. And then you're like in your 20s and you're like, no, you're a baby child. What are you doing?
Yeah, that's kind of the one thing about Annabeth is that I'm not trying to say that I don't like Annabeth, but my perception as being a kid who grew up with Annabeth and kind of looking up to her because she was older than me at the time I started reading the books.
Right. And I think the stereotype about her character is that she always knows what to do. So I think the books try to challenge that idea and show that she has flaws. But when you're like a kid reading this, you still kind of trust in her because you're like, yeah, she's really good at strategy and she knows what she's doing and she's so mature. But then when you're reading it as an adult, you're like, oh, this kid is very misguided in some
You're
ways.
also looking at it as an adult. You're looking at the world through different eyes, unfortunately, where you're looking at things like, because when you were a kid, I know kids that like climbed up trees and fell off them and got right back up and climbed up that tree. Now, if I did that, I'd be in the hospital for many years.
Yeah,
Like,
I think your perspective is different when you're a child. Like Violet Baudelaire is a good example. Like when you're reading that as a kid, she seems so
Yeah, she's
self-assured, but
14.
then sometimes, yeah, but then I think when you read children as an adult, you realize, oh, you don't sound as reasonable as I thought you did then. Not to like discount the emotions of children, because obviously a lot of times they're right, and I feel sorry for them, you know, that they have to try to express their emotions in a world that doesn't take them seriously. That kind of is the case with both Violet and Annabeth. They're actually good analogs for each other. They're a similar type of character. Even like the inventing thing too. They're very like industrious and think quickly on their feet and that kind of stuff. But I don't know. It's interesting that I think to younger readers, she probably doesn't quite scan as unreasonable as we've painted her. We've been kind of unfair, maybe not unfair, but like pretty harsh on her when we talk about Annabeth. And I think it's because we're coming from the perspective of someone who has already lived through being a teenager. If I was a teenager reading this, I'd be like, yeah, this is annoying. Like, I don't know. I think you have more righteous indignation when you're that
you also
age.
have to think about when you're a teenager, and this is for all our teenage listeners. You can tell us if we're right or wrong. Is that when you're a teenager, you're going through puberty for the first time, and you're feeling these emotions for the first time, and they're like super intensified. So if you read an example of like Annabeth, Percy, and Rachel, and you're like, I hate Rachel, she's the worst, she's stealing up Percy, and you look at it as an adult, like, no. Rachel and Percy work better together because as a functional adults, you can see all the things that you want in a relationship rather than, I just want to hold hands and like listen to My Chemical Romance together. I'm so angry with my emotions.
I think that there's a fine line to cross between, especially as someone who often talks about media meant for kids, I want to both acknowledge that when you are a kid, emotions feel much stronger than they are. And that is both confusing and valid, where I think Annabeth is a very good characterization of someone that age because that's how it feels to be young. You know, you feel everything is so intense and you're like experiencing everything for the first time. And like even minor things feel so much more fraught than they are. Like I'm not even talking about the big grand prophecy stuff. I'm talking about relationship stuff. Relationship stuff feels so much more important because it's the first time everything is happening. And that can both be maybe misguided in how, like, I don't know, in how overreacting it is. But at the same time, I'm like, okay, but you're not overreacting. You're reacting to the way that you're feeling at that time. Does that make sense?
No, that totally makes sense because kids and adults are slightly different in that way, where you look at relationships a little differently. But also, when it comes to Annabeth, what I really do enjoy about her is that she is very smart and that she does have flaws. Sometimes those flaws can be a little annoying, but she isn't like a Mary Sue. She can't get everything right. That's the most important thing about, I guess, Annabeth, is that unlike Hermione is pretty much the perfect person, in the sense of that she always knows what to do. Even when she's paralyzed in the Chamber of Secrets, she still had the book page in her hand. Like, there's things that, like, she can still save herself, whereas Annabeth needs to either save herself that way or she needs the help of her friends. And I like that balance.
I think you can get frustrated by the idea of Annabeth being so misguided sometimes, but I actually like it in the long run. Even though I'm like, oh, Annabeth, why are you acting so ridiculous? It's like, well, because we all act ridiculous. Even if you're not just like a 15, 16-year-old or whatever, even if you're just like a person who's emotional and like going through a difficult time and like, I don't know, people act unreasonably sometimes and that makes them more interesting, flawed, complicated people.
Oh yeah, no, B. Like, when I was in New York with you, like, sometimes we were getting into like silly arguments about nothing. And look at it now, it's like, oh my God, we're tired from the bus. Oh my God, we're tired by the train. Oh man,
Yeah.
Let's keep going up these stairs. I'm tired. Oh man, what are you, lazy or something? Then realizing, oh wait, no, it's exhausted.
Yeah, the slightest thing can make people act kind of unreasonable in a situation that otherwise is, I don't know, it actually doesn't matter. But like in that moment it matters. And that, I don't know. I think we've articulated enough about it. Beth.
Oh no, we've talked about it enough. And I feel like when it comes to Rick Riordan, I think he does a very good job talking about characters, especially the age of characters, because you can either have them too childish or too like, I'm an adult man.
Yeah, or too like weirdly grown up, right? Because you don't want that either. You don't want just like a small adult because I think that that's like the criticism of some YA books is like, why are these kids talking in this way? And I don't think that that's always believable either.
Well, there's like that weird thing. Like, well, my mom's gone, so I have to be like the woman of the house, and she becomes like a mini adult in that way.
So that definitely happens with certain characters, and it can be justified in the text. I'm just saying, like, that's the criticism of, like, I don't want to get into it, but like John Green books, for example, people are like, no teens talk like this. I could get into how some teens do talk like that, and they're usually pretty pretentious. My source, I was a pretentious teenager. So
are you using you as a source? Oh man, shots fired. B, are you ready for the next question?
I am.
What cabin do you think you'd want to be in?
I'm in Apollo, probably, right? Because it's like the god of poetry. I mean, archery and poetry are pretty good. I don't know. Like, I think that any kind of like artistic cabin would make sense for me, and their like quote unquote characteristics that are associated with that cabin are seem to most closely align with mine. That's the bracelet you got me when you went to the Getty event.
Yes, I did.
Because I think it suits me. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think I could fit into a couple other cabins depending on how I'm feeling that day or whatever. That's kind of the problem with any of these kinds of things, whether it's like, oh, what kind of whatever, like Divergent category are you in? What kind of Hogwarts house are you in? I don't even know like
the whole Divergent
district are you in?
That's the funny thing.
Yeah, I don't even know what they are. They're kind of confusing categories, but I think it's always difficult to like flatten someone's personality into like one specific category. But if I have to choose, then Apollo.
When B's hangry, they're in Aries cabin. War, destruction, death.
Yes. Yeah, no, I relate to Aries cabin sometimes. I really do. And sometimes I relate to Athena's cabin. And like they're sort of more strategy based, like logic based personalities. I don't know, like people are complicated.
Yeah.
I'm just going to choose Apollo.
Apollo's a good one. What's your next question, B?
Next question. Oh, this is perfect. Do you think Kid Zach and current Zach would be in the same cabin?
Oh man, this is hard because I would be in Athena cabin, but more as an adult, this is gonna sound like sacrilege, but I think I probably would be in Hephaestus because I like building things and problem solving in that way. Though I also like Aries cabin because sometimes I like to be macho and do stupid things.
I don't know. I feel like Aries cabin is too like overtly aggressive. Like I've never seen that side of you. Maybe I'm wrong, but like I don't see you as Aries cabin like any more so than any other person who gets angry sometimes. Like of course people get angry, but like as far as someone who belongs in that cabin, I don't know if that Hephaestus makes a lot of sense for you actually. That kind of fits with what I know about you.
Just start building things all day and singing shanties. Yeah, let's do it. I guess it wouldn't be in Poseidon cabin then if I'm singing sea shanties and making pirate curses.
Yeah.
Yar. But yeah, as a kid, I was more like Athena cabin because I was a very book smarty person, but I always liked to be like that weird smarty person. I loved Klaus. I was always a Ravenclaw. I still am a Ravenclaw. But when it comes to Percy Jackson, I think it kind of changes.
I mean, in some ways, you're a Hufflepuff too, though, right?
I guess.
You know what I mean?
But I don't like Hufflepuff.
Well, Hufflepuff gets a bad rap. I think I'm probably Ravenclaw and Hufflepuff, and I think we both kind of exist on that spectrum. The other day, someone said that I was a Slytherin, and I was like, I don't know if that's true. I don't think I'm nearly cunning enough to be Slytherin.
B, you're like, you know what? You know what house would you be in? What? You're going to have to catch these hands to find out.
Yeah, no, I feel like... But that's, if anything, that sounds more like Gryffindor. Slytherin has like so much more of an association of like being plotting or like very like motivated to like come out ahead, and I'm so not that person, so I don't know if that fits me. But
yes, everyone knows every Hogwarts house you got Lion, you got Badger, you got Evil, and then you got Smarty Pants.
No, well you have Brave.
Oh, that's good.
Evil.
Okay.
What else? Smart and Miscellaneous.
Oh, I thought Hufflepuff was the potato house.
Yeah, Miscellaneous. I mean, listen, they are near the kitchen, and they like to snack, and I'm on board with anybody who likes a snack. That sounds like my plan.
Oh man, all them Hufflepuffs have to roll themselves to the kitchen after a while. Like, we're so hungry. We'll get a snack. They're like hobbits.
Yeah. I mean, last week I made an Oreo cake from scratch, so I feel like I'd fit right in.
Oh my god, you monster! I could not. I would probably eat that.
It was
whole
a birthday
Oreo.
gift.
I know, but you realize that you're a monster because I would have eaten that whole Oreo cake by myself and then
There's
asked
still
for more.
some pieces in the fridge, actually.
Are you gonna mail them to me?
They would be so messed up.
I don't care. They probably still taste good.
They're like iced with whipped cream. They would not taste good. They would taste real weird.
This is
They definitely need to be refrigerated.
no. This is where you dry ice it, send it overnight, so I can have it for breakfast.
Literally, my sister was considering like selling pies and mailing them to people, and I was like, I don't know how you would do that.
I talked to your sister very briefly last time about her pie making scheme and how she could start selling it in prisons, put shivs and stuff in them.
Dental tools she steals from work. All right, we're getting too into this.
And she's not taking notes right now. Yeah, this is a good idea. So this is your question, okay? How has your opinion changed of the series?
To be honest, I like them better because at first I think I underestimated the series, to be totally honest. I thought it was going to be, I think that I thought the books were going to be kind of like simplistic and like especially like the first couple chapters I was like, oh, I see where this is going. This is like very like infotainment like we talked about. It felt a little heavy-handed sometimes in the way that it taught kids different things. I think that was maybe just like the exposition dump of the first book where they had to get a lot of stuff explained. But as things have gone on, the characters have become a lot more complicated and well-rounded, and like the plot has gotten like more nuanced in a way that isn't confusing. Like I think it's both complicated and interesting, where it's not just like, oh, I have no idea what's happening now. This is too many moving parts. So yeah, I think I just kind of I especially in the way beginning when we first brought this idea to my attention, like I literally knew almost nothing about Percy Jackson except the very, very vaguest like summation of what it's about. Like even I hardly knew any of the characters. I knew it was something about mythology, like really didn't know much at all. So I think it's just about, appreciating like how well this series is executed, I guess. I didn't really think it was going to be as good as it is.
It's funny because the original plan for this show was not to do Percy Jackson. It was going to do
Name of the Wind.
It was supposed to be the Name of the Wind and all of the King Killer Chronicles by Patrick Rothfuss, which would have been an interesting, because they're very similar. I think the Name of the Wind is more complicated when you get into it, which I still want you to read that. We're going to eventually make you read that book.
Somehow,
like I said, we, as if like you're already there. Yeah, this is we as in Legion. I'm actually 16 copies of the Name of the Wind stacked up in a trench coat.
So yeah, I mean, I guess that's what has changed.
Now, this isn't really a question, but to kind of go and add to this is, what do you think the main theme of Percy Jackson is? If you could boil it down.
Oh, geez. Main theme. There's so many themes, though. I mean, in some ways, there's like a loyalty theme about like staying true to your friends. But on the other hand, there's sort of a theme about not just being blindly loyal, because it sort of questions the ideas of alliances and like following someone just because you've always believed in what they believe. You know what I mean? We've had the discussion that Percy has when he meets Calypso on the island and everything. So I think that there's a lot of complicated things being said about like loyalty and friendship that I don't know if I could sum up in like one succinct thing. But I guess, I don't know, in some ways it's like similar to the message of Unfortunate Events in that like no one is perfect. No one is free from a fatal flaw in some ways.
Yeah, and there's more that we can explore with this because we're still in the last book. So probably once we finish the book, we can actually sit down and actually talk about the whole series as a whole. Finally.
Yeah. I think also each discrete book in the series has its own like specific theme it's focusing on, like, it's
almost like an Aesop
Sea of
fable.
Monsters. Yeah, exactly. Like especially Sea of Monsters was very like, oh, let's learn about what it's like to, accept people who are different than you, or you know what I mean? Like there's certain lessons that are within.
They're like themes that Rick Riordan wanted to explore in the book as well. And that's cool. And I like that your opinion has kind of changed a little bit because, man, this would have been a really bad show if it was very simplistic.
Oh, God, if I hated it. I mean, that could have been maybe interesting if I like really hated it or something and just criticized. I would have gotten so much hate, though, from our listeners. So I'm glad that I ended up liking it.
Yeah, we've had a good time so far.
Okay. This kind of works well with the last question or you asked, which is your favorite book in the series and has this changed over time?
Oh, man. Well, That one's easy because it's The Lightning Thief, because it's a very perfect book. But what I'm going to say might be very controversial. I love The Lightning Thief, but the one that I keep going back to the most is actually Titan's Curse, because I think it is such a well-plotted book, and it has some really great characters and some great character moments in it, that it should be a book that people should look at more. Maybe it might be a little better than Lightning Thief at times, because this is where Percy Jackson is being tested. This is where Annabeth is at her lowest at times. This is where Luke's at his highest and also gets kicked off a cliff. But also you have characters like Thalia that throws a curveball into the narrative. You have a lot of characters like Nico gets introduced. We get our first death with Bianca. And it's a book that's so well plotted out, because nothing is wasted in that book. I can tell you everything. It's like they almost use every bit of the buffalo, where every word in that is it goes into a sentence. It goes into the bigger plot of the story, because little things like Bianca hitting the skeleton and realizing that she's a daughter of Hades, like, it doesn't come into play until the very last part of the book. So when you reread the book, things start to click much more quicker. And that's the thing that I liked about it, is because it has so much more action to it. Yeah. It's much more, I guess it's the dark. No, I'm not going to say it's the darkest of all the books, but this is where things are starting to get dark. It's the Goblet of Fire of all the Percy Jackson books. Though the worst of all of them has been Battle Labyrinth. I don't like that book. It's really bad.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
But we won't get into that. I don't think.
We won't get into that. Though, actually, we might, because isn't the next question. Well, in a couple questions, you'll get to it. But
I don't even know what the questions are, but are you ready for your next one, B? What is something you dislike about the series?
Dislike about the series.
Don't worry, everyone. I have my blast shield down.
I have nitpicks about certain things, but overall, I really like the series. I think that there's a line to be drawn where I think sometimes Rick is trying to express that Percy and Annabeth and a few of the other characters have problems communicating, but I wish that there was more moments where they actually just straight up said what they were thinking. There's a lot of plot moments that wouldn't exist if people just shared something, you know what I mean? That even happened in the most recent chapter that we read, where Percy finally shares something with Annabeth, and it actually is helpful to them to share that information. And I think there's a lot of manufactured drama that comes from people being weirdly withholding about what they're thinking. You know what I mean? It's not just emotional things too, it's also the general prophecy stuff and things having to do with Luke and, Kronos. Just, I don't know. I feel like a lot of that could have been avoided if people communicated. And I get that that's plot, sometimes people don't communicate, but sometimes it just it feels a little bit too that's a crutch for him that he always uses that in writing.
Yeah, that's something that he does use a lot, and it's kind of we don't have enough time. Let's not talk about it until later.
Right, we don't have enough time, or I don't feel or yeah, when they do have time, then they're oh, I'm too shy, or I feel ashamed about this thing, or I feel I shouldn't say this for whatever reason. There's a lot of withholding of information that people on the same side have, but they don't share for whatever reason, and that can be really frustrating.
But then when you get to teenagers and a lot of kids, sometimes they give way too much information.
Yeah, right. You'd think that they would give too much information. Yeah, so I guess that's one of my main dislikes about it.
Cool. What is my next question, B?
Your next question is least favorite character.
Oh, I would say Luke, because that's a very easy one to do.
It's an easy one. Yeah, he's a jerk. He's bad, you guys. He's myth Nazi.
Well, yes, it's more like springtime for Hitler for him. But this is going to be really controversial, B, so if you don't hear from me, I want you to not touch any of my stuff. Give it all to charity, please.
You've been attacked by the stands.
Yes, I've been ripped to pieces. I don't like Nico.
Oh.
Out of all the characters in Percy Jackson, he's my least favorite character.
Even compared to Luke, because at least Luke is interesting?
Well, Luke's interesting when it comes to Nico. He has one shtick, and that is to be emo. And that's a product of the time, not the product of the character as a whole. There are things that I like about Nico, and there's things that even with Bianca, at least she had some reconciliation, whereas Nico is more stews. and doesn't want to be like part of the party. It's almost, again, it's the emo thing where Rick Riordan like looked at a bunch of scene kids. For some reason, I'm imagining like he's just like wearing a suit and like just being in like dad khaki pants and chinos, like walking into like an MCR concert.
He's like spying on the emos, like, what do the emo kids do? Yeah. I see what you mean. I'm okay with Nico. I think he's kind of interesting. He's become less annoying. I feel like it was a real heel turn when he became so mad at Percy, and then now he's friends with him again, and there's a lot of like weird characterization with him. So I could see like not loving him as a character. And yeah, even Luke, who I really hate, is like interesting as a character and how he relates to Annabeth and how he relates to Luke. So I kind of know what you're saying. If we're just looking at like, you know, who's your least favorite character in terms of like who's the least interesting character, I could see maybe not loving Nico as compared to someone like Luke, who's like at least sort of plot wise kind of fascinating.
For me, like, I hate Bianca because she's just incompetent and terrible. But when it comes to like a character that's just the way he's written, it's Nico. Like, at least with like Luke, there's some, you know, gears turning in his head. Whereas when it comes to Nico, it's almost like the Sasuke effect, where he's emo and depressing, but that's what people love about him, and that's okay if you like him. For me, it's a little different. Like, even like when it comes to Thalia, she's very similar to Nico in that way, but yet she has like these weird hang-ups that make her interesting. Like, she has a fear of heights. She has like a weird, you know, traumatic childhood. She doesn't take no for an answer, and she's also very stubborn. Whereas Nico's just like, blur, Percy, everything's terrible. Let's go get some Happy Meals. Yeah.
Yeah, I could see what you're saying.
So I'm sorry I just alienated a whole bunch of people, but that's just my opinion.
Yeah.
I'm just some guy. What do you like about Rick's books?
I've talked about this a lot, but I think I'll just like sum it up by saying I think he does a good job of like teaching kids without talking down to them, and he is pretty thoughtful in the way he writes. He thinks about maybe his audience could have like certain disabilities. They might be like I don't know, different in some way. They might be LGBT. Like, I feel like he's very inclusive in the way that he writes, in a way that isn't very common for like his straight old guy. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you kind of don't expect this level of care in the way that he writes. And I think that he really walks that line between After School Special and like totally like ignorant of people's emotions. Like, he's very thoughtful in the way that he writes. I think he knows that a lot of people, especially kids, find like solace in books, and I think they find community and understanding in books. And he does a good job of like writing a series that feels inclusive to everybody.
Yeah, so I think that's the one good thing about Rick Riordan when it comes to his books, is he has this really great idea of representation, because I've read plenty of YA books where you have like the token gay character who their entire personality is them being gay rather than that just being who they are, and they have a personality outside of them being gay.
And just based on like the fact that he made this series to normalize the idea of kids with ADHD and dyslexia, where it's not, you know, something to be ashamed of, but it's actually a strength in their difference and that kind of thing. And I think that he has a very strong thematic through line in this series, and I think in other series, from what I've heard from other people, that he just wants to like convey that just because you're different doesn't necessarily mean that that's a bad thing, which is sort of expressed also in the musical for sure.
He just wants to make the world learn.
Yeah.
And that's the great thing about Rick Riordan. And I think people not take that for granted, but when you look at other authors, sometimes like you can have them using like, I guess, J.K. Rowling, like she'll revise her things, whereas Rick Riordan just has it explicitly in the text, and he doesn't do any of like that AU stuff and in an alternate universe or in this or that, because I have my canon. He doesn't do any of that, and I like that about Rick Riordan. He's very straightforward, and if you've ever following him on Twitter, he's hilarious. Oh man, is he great. So B, what's your next question?
Your favorite character?
It's Rachel.
Rachel, yeah, so we're on the same page here. She's really interesting, right? Like, I was surprised too, but I used to really, I mean, I love Talia too, and Annabeth, and like Percy. They're all interesting, but I don't know, Rachel was like a dark horse in the race.
Well, when it comes to Rachel, what I like about her is much like why people like Batman over Superman, is because she doesn't have powers really, I guess Batman's superpower is she's just really rich. But at least
That's her superpower too.
yeah, she also has that power too. But what I like about Rachel is that she's very neutral in the sense of where like something crazy will happen and she'll give like a genuine reaction rather than Percy or Annabeth who've seen it a million times. And what I like about Rachel is that she doesn't have these special qualities, like she can't like do super cool powers, like she can't shoot laser beams from her eyes, but what she does, she makes up with it with her being smart. Like she throws a freaking hairbrush at Luke Kronos, and I love
she
that.
does. She does do that.
Like there's things like she doesn't have like
she has a lot of chutzpah, that character.
Yes, and what I love about Rachel is that she's very honest, but also she has emotions. And I like that. Not to say that Annabeth doesn't have emotions, but the way that Rachel has them is she's different in the way how she's more of an extrovert than whereas Annabeth is much like an introvert with her emotions. She's just like, everything's terrible. I'm going to throw this dart at Percy Jackson, and I hate everything. Curse you, Percy Jackson and the demigods. Like, there's some great things about her, especially when you first meet her and she helps Percy, even though where Rachel doesn't have to help Percy, but she does it anyways because she's just a generally good person. And even that interaction's hilarious, and I love her. She's great, and she has some great qualities to her, and she doesn't have super magical power. She isn't a demigod, which makes the story more interesting because she can easily be hurt, whereas everyone else kind of has plot armor at times.
So we're in agreement. She's a really interesting character. I mean, there's a lot of interesting characters, but right now, as of this current moment, I think both of us, our favorite character is Rachel.
We're Team Dare.
Team Dare. Not like the program for kids. That's a whole other thing.
Just say no.
Yeah. Just say no to redheads.
Oh man. Oh man, that hurts. Oh man.
You're not even a redhead.
I'm not even a redhead, no, but I have plenty of friends that are redheads and from Ireland, and yeah.
From Ireland.
What do you not like about Rick's books? I know it's kind of similar to
it's similar to the series, I guess, but yeah.
It could be like an individual book or kind of like things that are structured rather than the series as a whole.
I mean, I think I might just like, how do I phrase this differently? I mean, I talked about my problem with the characters not communicating thing. I think I'll speak maybe more generally. I mean, we've talked a little bit about how he's obviously like a plotter and that he has a very specific idea of how things work in a story. And I think that sometimes he like really sticks rigidly to like a sort of layout of like how he wanted the book to go. And there are like more obvious or interesting ways it could have gone, if that makes sense. Like, I feel like the solutions to certain problems could be more organically incorporated. Like it sort of feels like he's just following a beat, if that makes sense. Like I don't know, like we talked a little bit about the fight scene at the end of Battle of the Labyrinth and how it just sort of felt like he was fulfilling the plot point of, oh, there has to be a Battle of the Labyrinth, but it could have been written differently to be more interesting. But I think he was just like following what he had already had in mind for how that would go.
Yeah, there's one thing that I can say about Rick Riordan a lot of when it comes to outliners is that a lot of the time it's slow build up and sometimes their endings can be very climactic or kind of peter out because they don't know what to do. And you have like I'll play devil's advocate, even when it comes to like people that are gardeners, as George R. R. Martin says, like a Stephen King, he has some great ideas for plots, but the ending of his books are sometimes so terrible. He's not a good person at writing endings, whereas Rick Riordan kind of like ties up the loose ends. But the problem with having a series that you know it's a series is that there's no finality at times, which can be a little annoying. Like there's not really like a full wrap up.
Yeah, no, I think that's not quite my criticism. It's more like I think he's just like, oh, and now is when the Battle of the Labyrinth happens, and he's just like following that idea. And I mean, that was like our criticism, right? When we were first talking about it, it like felt anticlimactic because then there was the thing that happened with Kronos where he found him and like interrupted him from coming to the battle. And it just seems like if there was a glimpse of Kronos at the battle, it would have felt more interesting, or maybe just like the way it was written or something. I think sometimes like I feel like I'm out of the story because he's just like hitting all the beats, if that makes sense.
I totally understand what you're saying, B, because when it comes to like the way we look at these books is very slower, so you can actually literally see the outline.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. It's like because we do it chapter by chapter, we can really see like the bones of the story as we're reading it, because we're really like delving into every chapter, which is probably not the way that most people are reading these books. So I feel like I'd probably feel completely different if I like sat down one afternoon and ate a whole book. Wow, if I ate a whole book, I'd die. If I read the whole book.
What is this, the future? It's like, I'm going to read To Kill a Mockingbird, pull out a mockingbird pill. Man, that was depressing.
Yeah, I mean, like, devoured, I guess, is the word, because that means to read and to eat.
No, but when it comes to, like, Rick Riordan, like, how he, like, plots things out, it's kind of sometimes it's annoying because it's like, well, I want to withhold all this information. We have our good friend interrupt us because it's going to become important, like, 14 chapters from now. And we want that to be a big reveal rather than just saying it right now and getting it out of the way. Especially when it comes to, like, romance. I think Rick Riordan does it. I'm saying this is on record. I think how Rick Riordan does romance in all of his books are terrible because they're not organic, because it's supposed to be very cinematic.
Yeah, because he knew that it was going to happen. Yeah, I know what you're saying. Like, you know from the beginning that Percy and Annabeth have a thing for each other, and it's just kind of like a very obvious will they, won't they thing. And I think it could have been done maybe a little bit more organically.
No, it's more like, yes, it's the will they, won't they thing, but also how Rick Riordan makes how his relationships go. It's almost like there needs to be like an explosion behind them and the day has to be won, and then that's when your characters kiss. Like, there isn't like,
right, there needs to be
like,
an excuse for them to, right, there's no like normal conversation where it's like, hey, do you want to go on a date? It's like, oh, we just had a traumatic event happen, now we love each other, or whatever. Yeah, I know what you're saying. Yeah, there are definitely criticisms I have about these books. They're obviously not perfect, but I mean, it took me a while to think of problems I had with them, so overall, obviously, I mostly like them.
Yes. So what is my question? Give me.
Which character do you most relate to?
Well, that's easy. It's Rachel.
Rachel also?
Yeah, it's Rachel also.
Are you that rich?
I look outside. I just have like a helicopter and a jumbo
why
jet.
did I know you were going to say helicopter? I just knew you were going to say it.
You're going to say helicopter?
I was like, he's going to say helicopter. And there it was. It happened. I was like a fortune teller.
No, I like Rachel a lot. And also I can easily relate with her because they're like, we're weird artsy people.
Yeah, I could see that.
And there's just weird things that I do.
Yeah.
It's just quirks.
Mm-hmm. I feel like you have elements of Rachel and elements of, who am I thinking of? Elements of Grover, because he's like the sort of friend character. So he's like known for being like very like loyal and helpful. And I think you have that element to you also. It's a little bit of a mix because she's like a little bit more of like a brat than you are.
Bratty. See, the real truth is getting out here now. B just called me a brat. Oh man, this is hard.
I said she's more of a brat than you are. That's why I think you're more like Grover in some ways. Yeah,
I know you did, but you had to think about it. So now I know how you feel about me. I get it, B.
Okay, yeah, sure. All right.
B's just trying to like soften the blow a little bit by saying that I'm not bratty, but really like, oh man, that person's so bratty. But like Grover, yeah.
And he's also like the comedic relief, which I feel like that makes sense for you, where it's just like there's like an awkward situation. You're like, how about this thing? And you'll just like say something sort of like out of nowhere. And I'm like, what was that? And like that's very Grover to do, I think.
Yes, well, I mean, I guess that's the good thing. Like, oh yeah, this is what he reminds me of. Instead of, yeah, Zach reminds me of Luke, and I just feel like I gotta go take a walk now.
Oh my god, if you reminded me of Luke, we wouldn't be doing this podcast. That's for sure. I'd be like calling the police.
You'd be calling the police. Wow, man.
I'd be like, this guy is a Nazi. Like that. If you reminded me of Luke, that'd be like, are you like some sort of like incel horrible person?
No, as I like.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like, if the people in my real life who remind me of Luke are very bad.
If I was like Luke and he had this, I'd be like, oh man, B, nice guys finish last.
Yeah, exactly. It's bad.
Shots fired.
Yeah, you're definitely not like Luke. Thank goodness.
Okay, you ready for the next one? What has been your favorite memory doing this show?
I mean, there's like a lot of like little memories of like, you know, jokes and things but I mean, I know what your next question is. So I think I'll just say, I mean, when we went to the musical recently, that was amazing.
That was a lot of fun.
The moment when we went to the musical and you got the text from Rob to go backstage, that was like one of my favorite moments, I think, during the show, because we were like, oh my god, like it felt like so crazy, and we were like a part of something. And I don't know, that was really exciting. All of that stuff.
That is a really fun memory. Like for me, I traveled like 2,600 miles just to go to a show, which is something that I've never ever done before. I don't know if I'll do it ever since, but it was a lot of fun to do that, but also to hang out with everybody And it's weird that like a show like this and just a book series that neither of us have anything a part of other than just talking about it can bring so much joy to our lives. I guess it gives us like a weird glimpse of like Rick Riordan's life, like meeting fans and stuff. Like there was like a tweet he made about like going to jury duty, and one of the jurors, his daughter was like, "How could you do that?
How could you kill Redacted?" Yeah.
Yeah, how could you kill Redacted? Even in the jury system, Rick Riordan isn't safe.
Yeah.
And that shows a lot about like Rick Riordan's character, but also for us, when it comes to memories, I think I'd rather pay for a vacation where I can make a lot of memories of like waking up at like early in the morning, you're sleeping, and I go on to a beautiful walk near your beautiful lake and sit down by the gazebo and listen to music and have a good day. And then you wake up.
Yeah,
and
you also visited at like the most beautiful time too. Now it's like already frigid. It's already snowing.
maybe next time I should come during a blizzard. I think that would be the most lovely time to come.
Yeah, then we'll get snowed in though, and then it'll become like The Shining real fast.
Wait, which one of us would go crazy first?
Probably me.
Oh no. Oh,
I don't know. Well, maybe you, because you're not used to the winter. You haven't had like that good old Northeast sort of gaslighting into being like, yeah, this is nice.
we should do this every year.
All the snow. I love it.
Okay, that's them coming for Christmas next year.
Yeah.
That would be horrifying. Okay, B, what is your next question?
Do you think I'll be able to guess the ending of the series?
What do you think the ending is going to be?
Well, I guess this answers it, right? I mean, like, I don't mean like right now, because I guess we're not very close, but I think as we like get towards the last few chapters, do you think that I'll figure it out?
Well, the problem though is I don't know what you would predict, so I can give you like a definite answer, like if you're on the money or not. But I think
I don't think I could guess now. I don't personally feel like I could.
so. This is what I'm going to tell you, B, is that it's possible, but doubtful. Like I would be shocked.
Doubtful.
Because
Okay.
I've sprinkled some clues here and there, and they just go like right by you very, very quickly. So I'm not concerned.
Yeah. Well, I think because it seems so obvious to you because you know about it, but to me, I'm just like, I don't know what you're saying.
Yes, and I think you might be able to predict some things, but some things in the story might throw like a curveball or something. So we don't know.
Okay. All right.
So what has been your favorite joke of the show?
I mean, horsing around. Obviously. That's an obvious answer. Horsing around has become the joke. It has survived past all of us. I feel like when the Earth is just like in that Roald Dahl book, Sometime Never, when like no one's left on the surface of the Earth and the gremlins are all living underground, the gremlins will come up and they will see a piece of fan art of horsing around, and that will be the only thing left of our podcast. Is the memory of horsing around.
I still can't believe I pulled that out of my butt, because that was the one time I start rambling and it was like coming up with a story on the spot.
No, we just went into a weird place together, and I am glad we did. Because what's better than a horse girl story that's also a romance?
But not with the horse,
It's
obviously,
perfect.
with the dad.
Well, one half is a horse and one half is a man, and that's perfect because then it can be both.
I can have two dads now.
We should pitch this to Hallmark, is all I'm saying.
Oh my God, there's a Hallmark movie? Oh man, that reminds me, I saw The Last Christmas. What a piece of
Oh yeah, I heard the plot twist about Last Christmas. I gave you my heart.
Ah.
Yeah, that's all I'm going to say about that. I heard what the spoiler is.
Oh, that was bad, but I've been watching a lot of Disney Channel original movies. I'm going to start going into Christmas very soon after Thanksgiving, because I'm actually excited to watch A Miracle on 34th Street. I'm sorry, it's now Disney presents A Miracle on 34th Street.
Have you seen the one from the 40s?
That's the one from the 40s. I haven't seen that one.
Yeah, you haven't seen that one.
No.
That's the good one.
It's the good one.
That's like the only good one.
Man, yeah, we'll see. I still haven't watched the Mara Wilson one.
That's actually like a very good movie to watch early on in the Christmas season, because it starts like the first scene is during the Thanksgiving Day parade.
Oh, that's good. Don't worry, I'm waiting for when they get their gritty remake of that movie, like next year or whenever they decide to remake that movie again.
Where Santa gets canceled. I saw
Oh
you.
yeah, what was my tweet about that? It's like, because they have to change it because no one knows what the U.S. Postal Service is really anymore. It's like
That's true.
It's Santa getting caught up in cancel culture.
I know what the postal service is. I go to the post office every week, but I'm a weird person.
Yeah, but there's my new pitch for Miracle on 34th Street. It's about Santa accidentally getting caught up on cancel culture. Santa's canceled. Can't celebrate Christmas anymore.
Yeah, so and then the name of the movie will be called You Can't Cancel Christmas, and it's like a picture of Santa, like, yeah, it'll be great.
No, the picture would be Santa, like he has like a glove to his mouth and he accidentally sent a forward email of something.
Oh no.
Oh man, this sounds terrible. I want to watch it. What is your favorite book of all time?
Favorite book? So it's not just in the series, right?
Well, you can do the series, and you can also do another book.
Okay, so the favorite book in the series... Let me see. I kind of like Sea of Monsters, probably.
Whoa! That's shocking.
Really? I don't know. I thought it was like just interesting. It kind of like shook up the premise a little bit, and it like gave us a new setting, and I felt like a lot of new interesting things were happening, and I like Tyson a lot, and I liked the sort of message around him as a character. I don't know. I like all of them though. They kind of all like blend together in some ways because I'm reading them just like all as like one block, and I don't really stop in between to like reflect on each individual book. So I don't know. I feel like I really like Lightning Thief too. I think it in some ways I was critical of it at first when I read it because it felt very simplistic or like it was doing too much to like do the infotainment thing, but I've like over time come to appreciate how much it's able to do that.
Secretly, B just likes the idea that Percy Jackson gets turned into a guinea pig.
Yeah. I mean, that's like hilarious. I don't know. There's like a lot of like really interesting parts to that. There's like the whole empathy link with Grover.
And the twist at the ending of that book is pretty good.
Yeah, that's when you get introduced to Talia, right? That's like the very end.
That's the twist, is that the whole reason to go on this quest is to resurrect Thalia.
Well, they don't know that they're going to resurrect Talia. They think they're resurrecting the tree.
The whole real purpose of it. That's what I'm saying, is like they don't know the real purpose.
Yeah, they think it's just the tree, but then she's like appears and they're like, oh, there she is. Yeah, I think that's cool and interesting.
Now, what happens if you take the fleece off the tree?
Does she die? I don't know. I don't know if she can die, though, because she can only die in battle now, so we'll never know.
And she just disappears?
I don't know what magic is more powerful.
Well, it's Zeus magic, I guess.
Oh, and my favorite book, in general, I mean, To Kill a Mockingbird. I feel like in some ways I could be more critical of it now that I'm older, but I don't know. There's something about the way that it really captures like childhood in an interesting way and like the loss of innocence, and I don't know. I related to Scout a lot when I was a kid.
What's your next one?
What was the hardest spoiler to keep from me?
I can't tell you.
Not one that like I haven't. Do you know what I'm saying? Like ones thus far.
No, there's one that's really hard for me to keep.
Currently.
But
you can't tell me?
Can't tell you.
But what about ones in the past?
Ones in the past, the Nico and Bianca one was hard to keep.
What about them?
Because it's so obvious.
Children of Hades, yeah.
That one was hard to keep, and then also the one about Thalia, the tree version of her.
Yeah.
That one was also kind of hard to keep.
I forget which ones I guessed. Like, it's hard to think back and be like, what did I know or what do I know now?
No, you got the one that was correct, was the Nico Bianca one of them being a Children of Hades.
I mean, at a certain point, that's not a spoiler anymore. You're just like, oh, this is just foreshadowing, and I'm guessing based on foreshadowing.
Yes, and there's plenty that you may or may not have already answered that might be true or not.
Right.
That's why I don't know how you're going to predict the ending. That's the problem, is that you might actually get it right for all I know. It could be something like super duper wacky.
I know, it could just come to me. Sometimes I like totally get it 100% right and I can't believe it. And other times I'm like so far off base. So really it swings wildly.
Yeah, swing away, Johnny. This is my last question. You ready for this?
I'm ready.
What is the best piece of advice you could have given your younger self?
Oh, geez. Be kinder to yourself and to other people.
Oh my God.
Probably that one.
Oh, I thought mine was to get the sports almanac so I could become a millionaire by 17.
Yeah, right. I mean, that one too. But if I could go back in time, that's like a different thing. But yeah, I think that's like the best advice, because I don't think anybody could ever like look back on themselves and go, oh, I was too kind. Like maybe you like put up with too much, but like as far as like just being too kind, I don't think that's possible. So yeah, I wish I was less of a jerk. Like when I was in like a teenager, like in high school, I was kind of a jerk. And like in some ways I had reasons to be a jerk, but like it doesn't matter. Other people were going through stuff. I didn't need to act that way.
Yeah, I'm not sure if we would have been friends in high school. I think we're better now as adults.
No, probably not. We probably would have hated each other.
Oh no, we would have like eaten each other alive.
Yeah, no, I had a really bad attitude in high school, but I mean, like, a lot of people do because they're going through all sorts of stuff. So it's sort of like that, be kind because everyone is fighting a hard battle kind of thing. Like, I think the weird thing about high school, especially, is like everyone's kind of mean to each other, but like that's only because they're all going through their own stuff and they're taking it out on people. But if we all just were like, hey, we should have solidarity because we're all going through stuff,
No, that's a good piece of advice. And if I ever go back in time, I'm going to make sure to have the winning lottery numbers.
I mean, if you're in high school now, then maybe think about that. The old Breakfast Club adage.
Make sure to be in detention. You're going to meet a bunch of people, and then you're gonna smoke Lucifer's lettuce, and you're gonna have a good time in a bonding moment.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, that's some really good advice.
Question number 10 is: if you could change one major thing about the series, what would it be?
I think I kind of talked about it this time. I think if they made Percy Jackson immortal and not a demigod, it would make
that'd
this
be
interesting.
A totally different series, but I would also like to read that. I think that you could easily forego making a total plot hole with that if you just made a series about Rachel Elizabeth Dare.
I'm all for having a series for the Rachel Elizabeth Dare, but I think by having Percy Jackson not be the hero that everyone wants him to be, I like stories like that where you have like the super big villain but doesn't understand why he's the villain. Like some of my favorite stories, there's things like that, like Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson's a really good example of this. Another really good example, I'm going to start using Brandon Sanderson more, but like the Stormlight Archive has some of the best characters, some of the best villains ever. Like there's some characters that like, they're in my top 5 of all favorite characters, but I think when it comes to changes like that, it's interesting because you have like stories about like the chosen one, but they're not really the chosen one, and they're forced into that role, like much like Harry Potter is. I think that would be a really interesting twist to have Percy Jackson not be a demigod, but he still has like everyone interprets that he's a demigod. Like, oh yeah,
my sister is brandishing squash at me right now. I don't know why she's doing.
Honey nut.
I know. Yeah, I know it's a honey nut. Go away with the squash.
riveting podcasting stuff.
I'm sorry. I was like trying so hard to listen to you, and I was like, why is she waving squash in my face?
Because I found them.
Okay, continue.
Sorry.
But this is all staying in, so this is
I know.
stuff. No, but I would have going back to it, I would have loved if the twist was that Percy Jackson wasn't a demigod. He just so happened to have dyslexia and ADHD. That just was something that just happened. That would have been a cool twist.
Yeah. And he gets mistaken as a demigod because he has ADHD and dyslexia. Aha. That would be an interesting story, wouldn't it?
Yeah, because not necessarily everyone that has ADHD and dyslexia could be a demigod. It's just something that is a common occurrence, which would have been a cool twist. Not saying I would write the book that way, but I think the way that Rick Riordan has written the books is still a lot of fun. But that's the one major thing I would change.
Yeah. I mean, that would be a totally different book series, but I would read it.
I'd read it.
Yeah, I mean, when I said major thing, I didn't realize quite how major. That's like completely restructuring the plot.
Yeah, but it doesn't really change a lot of things.
Yeah, it would just like the events would be similar, but the reaction would be different. Yeah, I'd be fascinated. Like, how would he solve things if he didn't have water powers,
Yes, and that would be something like, he obviously would be like, almost like a front, or he's just really good at things. Like he's like a kid magician or something, so you have the power of illusion. Like you have to do like sleight of hand and things like you would think are magic, but really it's just being practical. Or, I don't know, he's just mistaken, or obviously it would come out, but yet it doesn't matter at times.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. I feel like it would be interesting, but I also like the book series we have. Do you know what I'm saying? Because it's like much about this series is about like coming to terms with being a demigod and what those responsibilities are. So it would be like a totally different theme, but it would also be interesting.
Yes, and I think it's one of those where you said one major change, that's what I would probably change. But the way the series is worked out right now, I think is perfect. I think you shouldn't change anything about it.
Yeah, I can't believe we're at 100 episodes. We did it, Zach.
100 smackers.
100. It totally snuck up on us. We both didn't realize until like today.
Like, oh yeah, I guess this is the 100th episode, guys.
I guess it happened. I mean, technically
really
our 100th
weird.
episode was like a couple episodes before this because counting bonus episodes or whatever, but...
No, this is all entirety.
Entirety?
Yeah.
Are you sure?
Yeah, we're not with bonus episodes and everything. This is our 100th episode on the feed.
Oh, I guess
It's crazy.
so. I guess it is.
Yeah, this is our 100th episode, and it's crazy to think about this. And
Yeah, that's so weird.
here's to 100 more, hopefully, or 200 more,
Yeah,
1,000 more.
probably. There's so much
Oh,
material.
God, please not 1,000.
Yeah. Yeah, we're going to be like Daedalus, like, I'm cursed to live forever.
Well, eventually, once technology gets good enough and we have like enough of our voices, we'll just deep fake it and we'll pay someone to like type in our reactions to things.
We've definitely made this joke before, but it is really funny to imagine like that someone just has like a secret Microsoft Sam keyboard of me just being like, good morning, campers. I am B. I like books and Roald Dahl. Like, I think that would be great.
Well, no, it wouldn't even be like that. But have you ever seen the one for Joe Rogan where someone took all the thousands of episodes he's done and they ran it through a program and they made an entirely new episode and you can't tell the difference?
Oh, God. Yeah, that's really creepy.
That stuff's creepy and I love it. Oh, man, I can't wait to get to that level.
No, we live in dystopia and I'm scared. Is that the note we want to end our 100th episode on?
Well, much like the Pandora's box, you have to look at the bottom of it and there's always going to be hope.
Yeah. Yeah, you really love
Hope
that
for the
metaphor because
future.
you're just like, it's spooky, but then there's hope at the end. And I feel like that's your vibe.
Well, everything about me is just like, you got to be optimistic about everything or else the world's terrible. You have to have some optimism.
It's true. You gotta.
You gotta, because when it comes to like podcasters, there's two types of podcasters, B. There are people that are really kind and love to do podcasting, and there's other people that like to hear their own voices. I don't know which one I fall into. Hopefully the latter.
I'm the second one. My voice is great. No, I'm joking.
Oh, man.
Totally.
Oh,
Someone's gonna take that out of context and then cancel me. I can't wait.
you gotta say, it's like, everyone just needs to be kind to each other. Everyone needs to, I guess, don't be an a-hole. Be kind to everybody, no matter who they are.
Yeah, that's the advice I'd give my past self, but that's also the advice I give my current self. I'm really grateful for all you guys for listening, because we wouldn't have made it to 100 episodes if no one was out there listening and caring about what we have to say, so.
I wouldn't have told you if we had no listeners. We would have kept going anyways, because I'm like a freaking cult.
I mean, I think I would have noticed if all of the emails were just very clearly you pretending to be an 11-year-old.
Hey, B, do you want to like yeet out of here and talk about Percy Jackson and shipping?
With the fidget spinners? No, this is really outdated.
With the fidget. Hi, we got an email from Hugh Mann.
From Hugh Man.
We also got one from Harper Lie. Am I looking at my bookcase?
Yeah, we got an email from I am, last name definitely a child.
Definitely a child, yes. I also got one from Baudelaire Violet. I'm sorry, Violet Baudelaire. It's hack your dyslexia's kicking in.
Yeah. I am 14. I'm being chased by a madman who wants my fortune.
I'm surprised. Hey, did anyone in Unfortunate Associates like write you an email like that? Where it's like, I'm 14 and being chased by a count?
Sometimes people were sort of in character.
Oh, God. That just sounds so nerdy.
And they'd like send us stuff in like
Codes.
code, and I'd be like, I'm dumb. I don't know how to decode this. I have a degree in literature, not in decoding things.
But our show we have some of the best listeners in the whole world, and our entire community is great. It's crazy to think how amazing the Percy Jackson community is compared to like other book series, because some people could be nasty and mean. Oh man, there's some fantasy groups I'm a part of where you say one thing wrong and everyone attacks you like piranhas.
Yeah, no, everyone is awesome. Really, we've gotten like the nicest emails. Even like the people who criticize us have always been like very gentle and nice about it, which we appreciate.
Well, they bring constructive criticism, which is more important than just saying, "Oh, I hate you guys. You guys are terrible." We did get that one review. It's like, I'm the #1 Percy Jackson fan, and you guys suck.
And this is bad. Yeah, there was that one, and then there was like any of the ones that are like, I ship you. That's not great. Those aren't even really criticisms because I think they like our show. They're just weird about it. And I'm not a fan of that. But for the most part, like 99.9% of the reactions have been pretty good. So I think we're doing okay.
B, the only ship that I agree with this is our friendship.
Yeah.
Oh, God, somebody take this out of context now.
Yeah. They're
They're
totally
like,
gonna
B, I
deep fake
ship
it.
you.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I know. I know they will. It doesn't matter. Maybe the real ship was the friendship we made along the way. Huh? That's it. That's the lesson of Percy Jackson.
Oh, no.
I figured
man.
out the theme.
Everything about this is great. I love doing this with one of my best friends. It makes me happy that I actually get to sit down and do a podcast. People listen to us rant and get to listen to my dumb jokes, which means a lot to me because as a kid, this is all I wanted was to have friends and to make jokes and make people laugh.
It's certainly been a ride, and I look forward to seeing where our next 100 episodes take us.
Yes, we're going to be going through Heroes of Olympus, the Kane Chronicles, Magnus Chase, the Trials of Apollo, probably all the Rick Riordan Presents books. Oh man, this is where you take your cyanide pill. That's why I gave you a Christmas present. You're gonna get one fake tooth. Use it when you're tired.
Yeah, that's actually what that tea strainer was. It was like an eject button, and I press it and it shoots me into space.
It shoots you into expect. Yeah. Oh, my tea strainer, the little Loch Ness Monster one I got.
Yeah.
You.
Yeah.
I have the little picture of Rosie. Actually, if I twist it in the right way, it just detonates. Rosie, I brought Rosie into this world. She's gonna take me right out. Well, guys, I think that's our episode.
I think
We've talked
it is.
about every horrible thing possible today.
Yeah.
Well, I'm Zach,
I'm B.
and let's keep
Staying
mortal. See you guys.
Bye, guys.